Good morning everyone. Welcome to today's daily news and analysis. Today we will cover these topics. Venezuela's vice president to take over as Maduro held in US jail. Delhi is set to declare rabies a notifiable disease. PM on SOMNATH SWABHIMAN parv 1000 years of unbroken faith. Targeted cancer treatment could be in sight via nanorobots. India has surpassed China, is now the world's largest rice producer. Unusual genetic code in Antarctic's microbes, and it yields rare amino acid. And the last data point topic would be India loses 0.4% of its GDP every year to natural disasters. We'll begin with the first topic. So, as you all know, under Operation Absolute Resolve, on 3rd of January 2026, elite US forces, reportedly Delta Force, conducted a 30-minute operation in Venezuela. Okay. Under using stealth technology and low altitude flight paths, they breached the presidential compound in Caracas. Okay. So, this is about the recent arrest of Venezuela's reigning dictator. Okay. President Donald Trump claimed that Maduro was bum rushed just as he was trying to secure a steel vault. Both Maduro and his wife Celia Flores were taken into custody and immediately flown out of Venezuela to a US warship. So, President Maduro was arrested, taken into custody by US forces and was taken to US warship. Post this development, the vice president of Venezuela took over as the acting president. So, this is the recent development in Venezuela where US went into presidential palace and raided the place and arrested the president. Okay. Now, why did this happen? What was the reason? So, the US argues that Maduro's regime isn't just a political entity, but a criminal organization which was involved in global drug trafficking. Maduro was declared a global criminal for associating with drug trafficking and for alleged narco terrorism. Along with this, he is also accused of arresting the public mandate and declaring himself elected despite losing the elections. Okay. So, the US argued that the president of Venezuela, Maduro, arrested the public mandate. The public mandate was against him, yet he declared himself as the elected member despite losing the general elections. What was the organization which was linked to Nicolas Maduro? The organization linked to Nicolas Maduro is the Cartel of the Suns, Cartel de los Solis, which is linked globally to drug trafficking and narco terrorism. Okay. Now, what is this organization? What is Cartel of the Suns? Okay. The name of this organization comes from Solis, sun-shaped insignias worn on the epaulets of Venezuelan military generals. Okay. This is unlike other drug cartels which are run by criminal gangs. US alleges that Cartel of the Suns is allegedly a state-run criminal network and US links this cartel to Maduro. Okay, it refers to high-ranking members of Venezuelan military and government who use their official power to facilitate drug trafficking. Okay. Under Maduro, US argues that this system became fully integrated into the state. It became a state-run drug cartel. Okay. And the US indictment claims that Maduro's partnered with Colombian guerrilla groups FARC and ELN. So Colombia is one of the neighboring countries to Venezuela. What US argues is that this organization under Maduro linked with the drug cartels of Colombia, and these groups provided safe passage, fuel and airstrips to cocaine dealers in Colombia. Okay. Along with this, Maduro's regime has been linked to Tren de Aragua, a violent Venezuelan mega gang that has spread across the America. So US also links Maduro's regime to this organization and alleges that this gang is being used by the president to control territory and manage illicit financing. Okay. So this is why this is the US allegation, and USA's ground to raid into Venezuela. Okay. Now, the relations between Venezuela and US were not strained as always. Okay. There is a history behind these relationships, and it starts from 1950s to 1998. During this era, US and Venezuela were very, very close allies. Both of these countries claimed to be anti-communist. You know, during the Cold War, US was fighting USSR over capitalist or free world versus communist ideology. And we all know that Cuba, the 1962 Cuban crisis, Cuba was a communist regime under Fidel Castro, and Venezuela being very close, in very close vicinity to Cuba and being anti-communist, was a natural ally to USA. Okay. The US supported military dictator Marcos Perez Jimenez. Okay. He was a staunch anti-communist who allowed American oil companies like Exxon and Mobil to flourish. Okay. So this was the dictator which US supported. Post 1958, when the dictator was overthrown, US maintained their close relationship with the Democrat Panto Fijo, okay, and his government. Okay. Venezuela was seen as a model democracy in Latin America, a stable pro-Western source of oil during the Cold War. So during the Cold War, this Panto Fijo governments, the democratic governments, also provided oil to USA. So till 1998, Venezuela and USA were natural partners. Okay. And the partnership was so strong that despite Venezuela nationalizing its oil, US remained its biggest customer in 1970s also. Okay. So this was the partnership, the economic and anti-communist partnership. Then came 1999. Hugo Chavez took the office, and this guy changed the course of US Venezuela relationships. Okay. He accused US to be capitalist and oppressive towards Venezuela. He also accused George Bush of overthrowing him through a military coup, and this created distrust between Venezuela and USA. Okay. What Chavez did was he used his oil wealth, whatever dollars or foreign currency he was earning through oil, to fund an anti-US alliance with countries like Cuba, Iran, China, Russia. You know, Cuba is communist, Russia is communist, China and Iran are anti-US in their stance. Okay. Chavez expelled those US oil giants ExxonMobil and ConocoPhillips in 2007, leading to massive legal battles. Okay. And Chavez was very popular in Venezuela because he used to run many socialist programs through the oil wealth. He was known for running socialist program from whatever wealth he was earning, and that is why he was very popular among the people. And before dying, he declared Nicolas Maduro as his successor. Maduro was as we all know, Maduro was an ex-bus driver. From here to being the president of Venezuela, he came a long way. So when Nicolas Maduro took over after Chavez's death, the relationship further deteriorated because Nicolas also had anti-US stance. And the things got worsened in this 10 years from 2014 till 2024. Why? Because USA imposed sanctions on Venezuelan oil. Okay. So US imposed maximum pressure sanctions on Venezuelan oil, and this froze billions in assets and contributed to hyperinflation in Venezuela. We'll read why this happened just because of one blockade. Okay. In 2020, US officially indicted Maduro for narco-terrorism and placed a 15 million bounty on him. Okay. They called him a criminal cartel leader. Throughout the 2025, we saw US intercepting drug boats, oil tankers in the Caribbean Ocean, setting up a stage for direct confrontation, and on 3rd of January, they raided President House in Venezuela. Okay. Now, we just read that in 2014, there was hyperinflation and unemployment and massive migration from Venezuela. Now, why did it happen? The economists blame Dutch disease for this happening in Venezuela. Dutch disease is a term used by economists to describe how immense wealth, the blessing, the mineral and oil wealth which Venezuela had, turned it into an economic curse. Okay. Now, why did it happen? There are multiple reasons. First reason is the spending effect. Okay. When oil prices are high, billions of US dollars flew into Venezuela. Okay. And to spend this money locally, both the government and the citizens convert these dollars into local currency. Since dollars are inflowing and local currency is reducing, dollars are increasing, local currency is reducing. It led to appreciation, artificial appreciation of Bolivar, the currency. What it did is, because Bolivar is so strong, everything Venezuela produced besides oil, like coffee, cocoa or manufactured good, became expensive for other countries because of the appreciation domestically also and export wise also. Local produce except oil became very expensive, and at the same time it became cheaper for the Venezuelan to import everything from import than to make it at home. Okay. So, they used to import everything except oil, because to import anything or to import the goods they need in domestically, it was cheaper for them because their currency was so artificially appreciated. What it did is, as import increases and flooded the country, the local farmers and factory owners could not compete because their own produce was becoming very expensive, and as a result the manufacturing plants and farms shut down. So, what it did is, Venezuela stopped being a productive country and became a consumer country. By the time Maduro took power, nearly 95 to 98% of Venezuela's export revenue came from oil alone. So, it was dependent on export of oil, all eggs in one basket, that is export of oils. Now comes another thing, the brain drain. Since there is nothing to make domestically, capital and labor, the engineers, money and best workers all move towards oil sector or government service, because that is where the easy money was. And as a result, what happened is, innovation in sectors like technology, tourism, agriculture completely stalled. You don't have brain for these sectors, the sectors completely got stalled, and the entire country's economic eggs were placed in one bucket, that is state run oil company. 1970 we learned that oil was nationalized, and then came 2014 sanctions. As long as oil prices were high, it was all good for Venezuela. But after the sanctions, the oil prices crashed. After the US sanctions, when people refused to buy oil from Venezuela, and at the same time the overall oil prices crashed, Venezuela has nothing to fall back on. Okay. Since oil prices were low, it could not earn forex, and it was aggravated by 2014 US sanction. Since they themselves destroyed their own farms and factories years earlier, they could not produce own food or medicine, and they did not have enough forex to import it either. Okay. As a disaster, without the oil money to pay for imports, shelves went empty, leading to hyperinflation to the tune of 1,30,000%, and it led to an humanitarian crisis like migration, famine, hunger in the country. So, this is why during the Maduro's time there was hyperinflation and people were not satisfied with his regime, and it is alleged that he was not elected, he was removed from power, but he arrested the public maintained himself as the elected leader. And the leader of opposition of Venezuela recently got Nobel Peace Prize also. Okay. So, these are the important developments in the recent Venezuela's case. Now, from UPSC's point of view, this map becomes very important, because whenever there is a country which is in crisis or there is a global crisis in some country, the area around it, the geography around it becomes very important. So, what you have to learn is Venezuela, its own geography. Okay. Now, neighboring countries, Guyana, Suriname, French Guyana, Brazil, Colombia, Ecuador, Panama. Okay. And this is Mexico and USA. And what USA is blaming is drug cartels from Brazil, Colombia and Peru are using cartel of the suns to traffic drugs to US. The Colombian drug cartels are using Venezuela to traffic drug to USA. Okay. So, this map becomes very important from exam point of view. Okay. With this, we move on to our next topic. Delhi set to declare rabies a notifiable disease. Okay. As of January 5th, 2026, the Delhi government is set to officially declare human rabies a notifiable disease under the Epidemic Disease Act. Okay. Now, from UPSC's point of view, we have to learn what is a notifiable disease. Okay. Now, Epidemic Disease Act 1897's Section 2 allows the state governments to take special measures if they are satisfied that the state is threatened by an outbreak of a dangerous epidemic disease. Okay. This includes the power to declare a disease notifiable. Okay. And what is a notifiable disease? A disease which a person fails to report. If a person fails to report such a disease or violates the regulation, he shall be punished under section 188 of the IPC. Okay. And when a doctor or lab reports a case of a notifiable disease, it triggers a response among the health workers that they may visit the area to find out the source and ensure that the patient is isolated. So, if a disease is notifiable, you have to report every case of it. And whenever such report comes, the health officials will go and find a source and ensure that the patient is isolated. And if you fail to report a notifiable disease or you violate the regulation made thereunder, you can be punished under section 188 of the IPC. Okay. Now, with this, with human rabies been declared as a notifiable disease, we have to learn something about the disease also. Rabies is caused by rabies virus and usually transmitted through saliva of infected animals, not just dogs, bats also, and other creatures or monkeys also cause rabies. And how it spreads? It spreads through bites or scratches. In rare cases, it can spread through infected saliva contact with open wounds or mucous membrane, eyes, nose and mouth. Okay. Once it is inside the body, the virus travels slowly along the nerves to the brain and spinal cord. And this journey, the incubation period, typically takes 30 to 1 month to 3 months. Okay. And once it reaches the brain, it causes encephalitis. And what kind of encephalitis? There are two kinds. One is furious rabies, one is paralytic rabies. Furious rabies leads to hyperactivity, agitation and aggression, while paralytic rabies causes paralysis, as the name suggests. Hydrophobia is one of the consequences along with aerophobia. So you have a fear of fresh air, you have a fear of water, spasm while drinking. Okay. While in paralytic rabies, the patient slowly sinks into coma. Okay. Paralytic rabies is often misdiagnosed, leading to underreporting, as most of the people relate or see this kind of rabies in people. Since it is very common, if a doctor does not see, or if a health person does not see these symptoms, he might not report a case of rabies, and that might turn that case into paralytic rabies. Furious rabies causes death within few days due to cardiac arrest, and paralytic rabies have a longer course than its furious form. Okay. On the basis of attack, on the basis of contact, doctors decide different types of treatment for rabies. If the infection is due to touching or feeding animals, then no special treatment might be needed. If it is nibbling of uncovered skin, minor scratches or abrasion without bleeding, vaccine is required. If it is single or multiple transdermal bites or scratches or licks on the broken skin, vaccine plus immunoglobulin is required. Okay. This is about rabies. With this, we move on to our third topic, PM on SOMNATH, SWABHIMAN Parv, 1000 years of unbroken faith. PM Narendra Modi wrote an article on SWABHIMAN, SWABHIMAN Parv. Okay. Why Somnath temple and this article becomes important is it has been 1000 years since the first attack on this great shrine, and this attack we are talking about is Mahmud Ghazni, who attacked the Somnath temple in early Jan of 1026 AD. Okay. So this temple has a lot of history, this temple has a lot of traditions, this temple is the first Jyotirling also. So this becomes important. In 2018 also there was a question on Somnath temple. Okay. The Somnath temple located in Prabhaspatan, Gujarat is also known as the Shrine Eternal. It holds a unique place in Indian history as a symbol of resilience, having been destroyed and rebuilt at least 7 major times in 2 millennia. Okay. So now what are the literary sources which talk about this temple? The first is Rigveda, which mention this temple as Prabhas Kshetra, as a holy site. This temple also finds mention in Mahabharata, which describes it as Triveni Sangam, Kapil Hiran and Saraswati rivers, and where Krishna spent his final moments. The Shiv Puran lists Somnath as the first of the 12 Jyotirlings, and the most important accounts are the foreign historical accounts by Al-Biruni and Marco Polo, which describe this temple of immense wealth and important trade hub connecting China and Africa. Okay. Now what is the traditional history, the mythological history related to this temple? According to tradition, the temple was built in 4 stages by different figures. The first was golden temple built by Som, the moon god, to thank Lord Shiva for freeing him of his curse. The second temple was a silver temple rebuilt by Ravana. The third temple was a wooden temple which was built by Lord Krishna, and the fourth and the final temple was rebuilt by Solanki kings Bhima I in the 10th century. Okay. Now, these are the attacks and reconstruction history of Somnath temple, the major attacks. Okay. The first major attack we consider is Mahmud Ghazni's famous sack. Mahmud Ghazni in 1025-1026 AD traveled to Gujarat from Thar desert using loads and loads of camels for carrying water and food for his cavalry. He traveled through a difficult path in Thar desert and caught the Solanki king in surprise. Okay. When he saw Mahmud attacking Gujarat, he fled to the nearest fort, which cleared Mahmud's path towards Somnath. Okay. And in the early January of 126 AD, Mahmud Ghazni looted and ransacked the Somnath temple. Okay. After the attack, King Bhima of Solanki and King Bhoj Parmar rebuilt the temple. Before this attack, there was a small attack on Somnath by Al Junaid, the Arab governor of Sindh, but the temple was reconstructed by Nagabhatta II, the Gurjar Pratihar king in 815 century using red sandstone. Then in 1299 CE, Ulugh Khan, the general of Alauddin Khilji, also destroyed this temple. This was one of the early victories of Alauddin Khilji in India, 1299 CE. And after that, Mahipal I in 1308 CE reconstructed the temple. And in 1395, Zafar Khan, the governor of Gujarat, again tried to destroy the temple, but it was rebuilt by the local devotees. Then in 1451 CE, Mahmud Begada, the Sultan of Gujarat, also destroyed some parts of the temple, and it was restored with local efforts. And in 1706 CE, Aurangzeb ordered total demolition and conversion of this temple into mosque. Okay. But in 1782, Ahilya Bai Holkar built a separate temple adjacent to ruins in 1782. She built the new temple in 1783, located around 200 meters away from the original ruins. Since it was ruined by Aurangzeb's attack, Ahilya Bai Holkar created another temple 200. So this is Somnath ruins, and this is Ahilya Bai Holkar's temple. She shifted the idol from the main temple to this newly built temple and made an underground Garbhagriha to protect the idol. So Ahilya Bai Holkar is also known as one of the famous reconstructors of Somnath temple. Now, in the post-independence era, it was Sardar Patel, the Iron Man of India, who visited the temple, the ruins of the temple, and vowed to restore the temple to its former glory. And in this effort, he was supported by K.M. Munshiji. Okay. The foundation of this temple was led by Jam Sahib Digvijay Singh in 1950. In 1951, a very famous inauguration happened when India's first president, Dr. Rajendra Prasad, performed Pran Pratishtha. This was the UPSC question in 2018, the Pran Pratishtha 2020 of Somnath temple. And due to this, there was a political tension between Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru and Dr. Rajendra Prasad. because Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru said that states' involvement in religious events is not India's secular setup. Okay. Now, the architecture of this temple, the newly built reconstructed temple, is built in Maru Gurjar or Chalukyas of Gujarat. Chalukyas of Gujarat, in the Chalukyas of Gujarat style. Okay. Now, some of the key facts which might be interesting for you guys to look into. There is a pillar in the temple which points towards the south and claims that there is no landmass in straight line between the temple and the south pole. So, temple connects directly to the south pole without any no major landmark. Okay. The GPR radars in 2017 to 2020 revealed that there is a 3-story L-shaped structure buried beneath the current temple, confirming multiple layers of historical construction. All historical constructions we read are being confirmed by this study. And the last but very interesting fact about Somnath temple is many Arab accounts like by Zakaria al-Qazvini claim that the original linga, the original Shiva linga was suspended in the air using magnets in the ceiling and the floor. So, the linga was suspended in the temples using magnets in ceiling and the floor. And modern historians often view this legend as a clever architectural trick. It is widely believed by the historians and the scientists that temple's architect used a sophisticated understanding of magnetism to create this temple. By placing lodestone, natural magnets in the ceiling and the floor and potentially in the wall, they created a balanced magnetic field that held the iron containing stone lingam in the place through magnetic levitation. So, there was magnetic stones in ground, in walls and on the ceiling, and this created a magnetic equilibrium which helped in suspending the linga in air. Okay. According to a legend, Mahmud was suspicious about it and he started removing stones from the temple's structure. As he removed the stone, the magnetic balance was disrupted and the Shiva linga began to tilt and come down to the floor. So, this is the historical facts or the interesting facts about Shivling. Okay. So, Somnath temple, its architecture, its reconstruction history, the travelers, the historical literary sources, all are very important from the point of view of UPSC this year, because one, it has been 75 years. As we know, 1951 was the Pran Pratishtha year. So, 75 years of modern reconstruction and 1000 years of the first major attack on Somnath temple by Mahmud Ghazni. So, both Mahmud Ghazni, his historians, the role of Al-Biruni in Mahmud Ghazni's court, Al-Biruni's accounts for Somnath temple and the history of Somnath becomes very important for UPSC this year. Now, we move on to the next topic. Targeted cancer treatment could be in sight via nano robots. So, Dr. Ambarish Ghosh, the professor in Indian Institute of Science, received Tata Transformation Award in November for his advanced cancer treatment using magnetic nano robots. Now, how do these nano robots reach cancer tissues? Okay. The nano robots mimic the movement of bacteria within a little helix shaped tail. Okay. It functions as a propeller in a boat as they travel through different mediums. Okay, as the helix unturns, the object moves forward. Okay, and the helix has a little magnet attached to it, and it creates a magnetic field that may make a drilling motion. So it moves like this, like a drill. Okay. Now what doctor do is, doctor use external magnetic field to steer them through blood, dense tissues, and even into interior of tumor. Okay. So since it has a magnet attached to it, the external magnetic field is used to make it travel to thicker or thinner medias, including the tumor cell. Okay. Now, how they attack the cancer cells? They attack the cancer cells through targeted delivery and magnetic hyperthermia. Now, targeted delivery, how is it done? They carry drugs directly to the tumor, sparing the healthy cells. Either their surface or the tip is coated with the drug and rest is made with silica, which is body acceptable. Body accepts silica. They preferentially bind to cancer cells after penetrating in their environment without affecting the non-cancerous cells. So it is a targeted delivery. Okay. And second method is, this is how they deliver drugs, and this is how they kill by themselves. They themselves become the killer of cancer cells. This is magnetic hyperthermia. By altering the magnetic field, the bots, the outside magnetic field, the bots can be made to vibrate and generate heat. Since the bots have a magnetic strip to their tail, we can alter the magnetic field from outside and we can make the bots vibrate, and it generate heat above 42 degrees Celsius. And when this much amount of heat is generated, it physically kills the cancer cell from inside. So one is drug delivery method, another one is magnetic hyperthermia. Along with this, there were several similar developments. Okay, so this is the development done by Professor Ambrish in IISc. Along with this, there are several other developments in nanotechnology, such as IIT Madras's nano injection system, which was in collaboration with Australian University. They produced or patented a revolutionary nano injection platform specifically for breast cancer. It uses silica needle like nanotube to inject drugs directly into the cancerous cells. Along with this, there was IIT Guwahati's smart injectable hydrogels. Hydrogels again becomes very important. As of January 2025, IIT Guwahati's researchers developed a smart hydrogel that acts as a mothership for nanotherapeutic agents. The gel is injected into near the tumor. It releases medicinal cargo when detects high level of glutathione, a molecule that is abnormally high in cancerous cells. So it can identify which of the following cells is cancerous. Okay, and only when it confirms high level of glutathione, it releases medicinal cargo. Okay. Along with this, INST Mohali and IIT Bombay created gold nano cups. These were unique cup shaped nanostructure that absorbed near infrared light. Once they settle in the tumor, a harmless laser is shined onto the area. The cups catch the light and convert into intense localized heat to cook the tumor, similar to hyperthermia. In hyperthermia, we are using magnetic power. In this, we used near infrared light to heat up the nanorobot, and then it kills the tumor from inside. Okay. With this topic is completed. Now we'll move on to our next topic. So our agriculture minister Shri Shivraj Singh Chauhan gave a recent speech in which he claimed that India has surpassed China in being world's largest rice producer. So this is important from a factual point of view. At an event, the Agriculture Minister Shri Shivraj Singh Chauhan said that India has surpassed China in rice production and has become the world's largest producer of rice. In 2025-2026, India produces 150 million tons of rice, which is greater than China's 145.28 million tons. Along with this, India is the leading global agriculture export and world's largest exporter of rice. Rice basmati and rice non-basmati put together, the rice category forms the highest exported agriculture item in India. If you separate them, then marine products followed by basmati rice followed by non-basmati rice. But if you put them together, the total export of rice is more than the marine products. Okay. From prelims point of view, the important thing to read in this is the conditions required for rice cultivation. The average temperature which is required for rice is 21 to 37 degrees Celsius. The germination temperature is 25 to 35 degrees Celsius. Annual rainfall, it needs large amount of rainfall. It is 100 to 150 centimeter. The soil texture it requires is clayey, loam or silty clay, alluvial soil. Soil pH it requires is 5.5 to 7, which is slightly acidic. So, it requires acidic soil pH. It requires high relative humidity to 80 to 85%, standing water of 5 to 12 centimeters and sunshine, prolonged and high level of sunshine, especially during the ripening phase. Now, another point which you have to remember is the states with the highest production of rice. Keeps on changing, but the major states remain the same. First is Uttar Pradesh with 20.9 million tons of rice. It has 14% of the total rice output. It is followed by West Bengal, which produces 16.5 million tons and output share is 11.1%, followed by Telangana, Punjab and Andhra Pradesh, where the million ton production is 17.1, 14.4 and 11.8, which is 11%, 9% and almost 8%. Okay. With this, we move on to our next topic. This came in Hindu in today's paper, science section. Okay. Unusual genetic code in Antarctic's microbe yield rare amino acid. Scientists have discovered that certain microbes have rebranded version of instruction for life, which could change how we engineer new material and medicine. So, to understand this, we have to think DNA of a manually written codes or words. Okay. So, to visualize this, let us take this code AUG GCA TAG. This is a code for our understanding. Now, this code is read in 3-letter words called as codons. Okay. And what is this code made of? These are base pairs. Okay. So, we read this code in blocks of 3. Okay. So, think of DNA as a manually written in code of 64 3-lettered words known as codons. So, there are 64 letters like this: AOG, GCA, ACG, TAG, GTA. So, there are 64 letters like this which make codons, and every sequence of DNA is read in blocks of 3. Now, 61 of these words tell the cell to add a specific building block or a amino acid to the protein. For example, AUG tells the gene to make methionine, GCA tells it to make alanine, TAG. Okay, so these are the now we are discussing only the sense codons. So, 61 of these 64 words, 61 out of 64 words tell the cell to add a particular amino acid to the protein. Okay. Now, since 61 tells you to add protein, there are 3 words which usually act like period at the end of a sentence. They tell the cell to stop building the protein. So, in this example, this tells the protein to start and create an amino acid called methionine. Okay. GCA tells the protein to add alanine to this, and TAG, which is a stop codon, tells it to stop the production of amino acids. Okay. So, there are 64 codons. Codons are these 3-letter blocks, out of which 61 are functional sense codons which tell you to create a protein, and 3 are stop codons. Okay. What has been discovered? The researcher found that some archaea in Antarctic, tiny organisms that look like bacteria but are biologically different, do not use this standard dictionary. They do not use this dictionary of codons. Specifically, they found that a stop codon, we just discussed that TAG is a stop, one of the 3 stop codons. But in this organism, TAG is not a stop codon. It creates or it signals to add a rare amino acid called pyrrolysine. Okay. So, for this particular organism, there are 62 codons which tells the gene to produce amino acid, and only 2 codons are stop codons. So, it has 62 building blocks and only 2 stop signs. What TAG does to humans or other similar organisms is stop the production of amino acid. It is a stop codon, but for this particular organism, it creates a very rare amino acid called pyrrolysine. So, only 2 stop and 62 building blocks. Now, why this discovery matters so much? It has a major implication for technology. Why? First, scientists previously likely misread the protein sequences of these organisms because they were using wrong dictionary, because they never knew that this particular organism creates pyrrolysine using this codon. Scientists misread the DNA of this organism. Now, in UC Berkeley, some of the researchers have successfully taught E. coli bacteria to read this PYL code. So, E. coli bacteria also reads TAG to create pyrrolysine. Okay. It does not read TAG as a stop codon. It treats TAG as pyrrolysine creating codon. Okay. So, they were able to force that particular bacteria to create full proteins that included these amino acids, and because of this, this particular discovery becomes very important from bioengineering point of view. We can create or we can nurture organisms which read this particular stop codon to create this particular amino acid, and through this we can generate or we can create this rare amino acid. So, this is the importance of this particular news. So, we have read that there are 64 codons, the 3-letter base pair words, okay, and those 64 codons, out of those 64 codons in humans, 61 are sense codons which tell you to create one of the 20 amino acids, and only 3 codons are which tell you to stop. Okay. But in this particular organism, there are 2 stop codons and 62 functional sense codons, and one of the stop codons which works like a sense codon is TAG. Okay. Now, what are the total number of codons in a genome? A genome code is a dictionary consisted of 64 possible codons, as we read. These are 3-letter words made from 4 nitrogenous base pairs: adenine, guanine, cytosine and thymine in DNA and uracil in RNA. So, these 4 bases create some codon: GCA, GGA, GGG, TTT, UCT. So, like this there are 64 codons, okay, out of which we read 61 and 62. 61 codons are sense codon, 3 are stop codons. Now, because there are 64 codons but only 20 standard amino acid, most amino acids are represented by more than 1 codons. Okay. Now, while there are only 65 types of codon, a single strand of DNA consists of billions and billions of these triplets, these codons, repeated in different orders to create genes. In humans, approximately 3.1 base pairs, 3.1 billion base pairs are there. 3.1 billion base pairs are there in a human genome, and since 3 base pair make 1 codon, there are almost 1 billion codon in human genes. And since only 1 to 2% of the human genome is actually coding for protein, which is the gene part of it, this means that approximately 30 to 60 million codons that are actively used to create 19,000 different types of protein in your body. Okay. There are 3.1 billion base pairs, 3 base pair makes 1 codon. So, there are almost 1 billion codon, and only 1% of the gene is responsible for protein synthesis, that is the gene part of genome. 1% of genome is responsible, that is the gene part. So, only 30 to 60 million codons are actively involved in creation of proteins. With this, we finish this topic. Now, this is a very important data point to remember. This can be used in your mains as well as your prelims. India loses 0.4% of its GDP to every year to natural disaster. Recently, World Risks report stated that India loses 0.4% of its GDP every year to disasters. Emerging Asian economies that comprise India, China and ASEAN 11 face a escalating threat from natural disaster that is growing both in frequency and intensity. Over the past decade, there is almost an average of 100 disasters annually, which impact almost 80 million people. The nature of this threat varies geographically. While floods and storms are primary driver in India, tropical cyclones frequently batter Vietnam and Philippines. China and Indonesia are seismically very risky zones. So, these countries are vulnerable to different types of disasters. From 1990 to 2024, India lost annually 0.4% of GDP to this natural disaster, which includes both hydrological as well as meteorological disasters. India majorly loses because of hydrological disasters such as floods and landslides, while Myanmar and these countries is due to extreme temperature, cyclic storms, etc. Among the Asian economies, India ranks second only to Philippines in the World Risk Index, that is vulnerability as well as exposure, the population exposure as well as the vulnerability of the geography. Okay. So, this is a data point I wanted to discuss, that India loses 0.4% of GDP annually to natural disaster. Who releases World Risk Index? It is released by Biter Entwicklung Hilft, BEH. Okay, and who releases global risks report? It is World Economic Forum. So you have to remember the differentiation between these two: global risk report and world risk report, which is launched and published by BEH, and global risk report is by World Economic Forum. With this, we finish today's DNA. We'll see you in the next class. Thank you.